Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the next session at the Purpose Driven Business Summit. Really glad to have you back. And if you're joining us for the first time, I'd like to give you a warm welcome. We've had a few sessions already, and if you missed those live, just want to give you a reminder that as a person that has signed up to register and attend, you have access to the recordings to all the sessions on the YouTube playlist that you've gotten the URL for, but I'll be sending that out again. So I also want to remind you that we have a private Facebook group where you are, we're encouraging you to be active in there, engage with other attendees of the summit. Some of the speakers are also in there. So please, share what you're up to. And if you're already on a purpose path, tell us what you're doing. If you're thinking about it and have questions, please ask. We're all there to support each other. And, in some ways, the private Facebook group is the way we do networking in the time of Zoom. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. So that's all my housekeeping and logistical reminders. So let's get going with our speaker for this session. We have Cullen Schwarz from DoneGood. And I think you may have seen when you're searching for something on Amazon, for example, you type in like toilet paper and up pops a DoneGood thing that tells you like some other options that are from socially conscious and environmentally friendly companies. So I'm really excited that Cullen is here to share with us what they're up to because they're doing a lot of good. So welcome, Cullen.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having us. Us.
Yeah, no,
me physically, us, spiritually, metaphorically. Yeah.
There you go. So tell us a little bit about, like, how did you get interested in this? What's your background and what brought you, because you're co-founder and chief of Good Thoughts for Good. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that's those are, we all have cool startup titles. My traditional title, if I'm signing like a bank, something with the bank, I'm CEO, but no, chief of Good Thoughts. I think it's both suggests positivity and the vision and directional things that CEOs, I guess, are supposed to be responsible for. And also, I was a philosophy major, so it's chief of good thought. But so yeah, I don't know my background. When I was an undergrad, I was a member of a lot of the, progressive student organizations and movements on campus. I'll date myself a little bit. This is, we're like protesting the Iraq War and things like that, And one organization that I got very involved in and ultimately the national leadership of was a group called United Students Against Sweatshops. And we would get universities across the country to put a code of conduct in their apparel contracts. So anyone who was making clothing for the university, I mean, those are often big contracts, especially if it's a big school. It's very lucrative, a lot of money at stake. Yeah. They would have to demonstrate that they were paying people at least a decent wage, a non-poverty wage, basic health and safety standards. Essentially, they'd have to demonstrate that they weren't making the clothing in sweatshop conditions. And companies would do this because they wanted the university's money. And so that was my first exposure to the idea of the power of consumerism in helping to affect social change. I mean, this wasn't public policy. It wasn't a nonprofit doing this. I mean, those things are very important. In this case, it was just a big consumer with a lot of money who was, then able to help make people's lives better because these companies would make sure that their practices were up to snuff, up to standard because they wanted the money, And so I thought, well, if you could get, millions of people doing the same thing, our economy is 70% consumer spending. Americans gave $400 billion to nonprofits last year. And again, that's incredibly important. I hope the number goes up drastically every year. So many nonprofits doing so many great things. However, whereas we're given $400 billion, we're spending 325 times more buying stuff. And so for those of us who care about social and environmental justice, we got to be paying, some of us got to be working on that, the $130 trillion we spend buying as opposed to the $400 billion. And so, like I said, public policy is important. You need to vote. Got a big election coming up. I hope everybody votes, get registered. But man, if there just is an underworked opportunity, it's in consumer spending. And we say that the dollars that we all spend are the world's most powerful force for change, because we believe that it's such an incredible amount of resources, and affecting this paradigm shift. I do think that the shift from the 20th century and prior, the old Milton Friedman philosophy that a business exists solely to maximize profit at all costs, that's been the defining philosophy, and I think it still is, but it's beginning to change. And when we shift to a paradigm where businesses are supposed to be good moral actors in the world, just like we expect people to be. It's like businesses want to be people. No, we're people too, right? The famous Supreme Court cases. No, corporations are people. All right, well, if you are, we expect people to, not be dicks. And yet, but business. Oh no, that isn't personal. It's business. And then somehow that shifts all our thinking to say, well, then just anything to make a buck. Whatever you do, exploit people and kill the planet. As long as you're making money. Well, if it's business, then that's okay. That paradigm shift will be the most important ideological shift of our time. We believe. And we believe consumer spending will be the thing that fuels that. And so then how do we help drive more consumer demand for ethically and sustainably made goods? We believe you have to make it super easy. And so like you mentioned, we do have a Chrome extension where once you can get that on our site and it's free. Then anytime you're shopping on Amazon or Google or go to big name retailer sites, it'll show those ethical and sustainable alternatives that have what you're looking for on the side of your screen. But we also just have a shopping website, DoneGood.co. Forbes called us, the Amazon for social good. You shop products from a wide array of categories. And so we try to make it super easy and quick and convenient for people to shift more of their spending from these systems that are locking people in poverty and contributing to climate change, and instead to businesses that are empowering people, investing in communities, paying living wages, and fighting climate change. Because again, if we do that, we start shifting even a fraction of that $130 trillion. That impact is huge. We believe that the number one way any of us as individuals makes an impact on the world is by deciding who we give our money to. Because whoever we give our money to, they get to do more of whatever it is they're doing. And if they're doing bad, there's more bad. They're doing good, there's more good. I mean, we live in a supply and demand economy. So whatever consumers demand, the market supplies. More and more now, we're demanding, good products, good prices, but we're also demanding good pay for workers, sustainably, environmentally friendly products. And the more we demand those things, the more of that there'll be in the world and the better the world gets.
Well, I love that you have set up this whole platform to really not just talk about how do you hook up companies and consumers, but you're really actively doing that. Now, how long has DoneGood been in existence?
Depends how you count. As an idea in my mind, coming up on 20 years, maybe, that's like I said, during college is when I first started to think about how powerful consumer spending would be. And I want to do something like that, but then I out of college, I got a job working in politics. I was kind of into that too. People told me I'd be well suited for it. We need good people in the system. At first I was like, I don't want to be in that system, but then no, we need people. And I kind of got talking, okay. So my first couple jobs out of college, maybe I'll try this out a little bit for a couple of years. Well, as it happens, 2 years turns to 10 or whatever. And you're like, boy, I've been at this career for a while. But man, it sure gets tough, just feeling like you're fighting the other side. So I worked in DC, I worked on Capitol Hill, worked in the Obama administration. Sure feel like you're fighting the other side to an endless tie constantly, So what happened finally was that this idea, my friend and I, we applied to the Harvard iLab, the university's business incubator, their startup program. We got in, and so then it was like, oh well, now we have to do this thing. That was in fall of 2014. I was still working in DC. I was coming up on the weekends, and then officially we quit our jobs and sort of signed papers to start the company in 2015. So that's also our official birthday we cite is June 9th, 2015. Like a week later was my anniversary going full-time on it. In fact, my first full-time on DoneGood was the day that Donald Trump came down the escalator and announced his candidacy. So we say the DoneGood era tracks exactly with the Trump era, and no better time, So really, 2015, of course, but even that, it depends how you count, because we were testing different business models in the greater Boston area. So we launched nationally with our Chrome extension in November 2016. So that's also kind of our birthday and more of our current form. Then we launched our shopping site in November 2017. Also, there's another birthday in that we became a B Corp, legally incorporated as a public benefit corporation, March 1st, 2016. That's a bit of another birthday. So, but look, I've been working on it full time for 5 years. So generally, if you asked the question, I'd say 5 years, June 2015.
Well, you've made a ton of progress.
Well, but plenty more to go. You know, that was actually early on. We were really working towards this deadline. We were going to be the official app of the Boston Green Fest, which to us in our first couple months was like the biggest deal in the world, you know, and we had to do all this work and pulling all-nighters. And then we finally got through that. And we said, wow, we really did something. And it was sort of like, we felt like we like climbed this huge mountain and we're totally exhausted and dead. And then we looked up and there was just a million more mountains to go.
Yeah.
But I had someone who was an entrepreneur who started her thing a little bit before me. She said, yeah, that's totally how you're going to feel. And you're always going to feel that way. And it does always feel that way. Every time we climb a mountain, we just like, you say, oh, you made a ton of progress. I'm like, whatever. We have like so much more to go. But she said, you have to stop and turn around and look at all the mountains behind you too. And
yeah.
so I appreciate you saying that. We have to remind ourselves that like, we're like, we have so much more to go to get to where we want to get, which is, you know, millions of people, everyone, DoneGood's a household name. Millions of people are diverting billions of dollars to help fuel the entire social enterprise movement. And we have so many more mountains to climb, but I appreciate you saying that. We've climbed some mountains over the past 5 years for sure.
You're climbing the community of businesses that are really taking on doing good and building it into their DNA. They're, I'm sure, growing faster than you can even keep up with.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. And the really exciting things are that it's in other areas. You know, it's kind of food and clothing for a while. And now it's home goods companies and, you know, it's jewelries and it's slippers. But it's bed sheets, it's mattresses, it's, you know, candles. I mean, just now it really is becoming, I mean, we're still, you know, electronics are tough. There's still, I don't know, an ethical flat screen TV out there, you know, but it's becoming more and more categories, and the level of quality. You know, the rap on sustainable fashion was that's a bunch of burlap saps and hemp and a bunch of hippie stuff, you know, and now it really is like really stylish. I mean, kind of all manners of style, all price points, you know, from luxury to basics, and good quality stuff. I think more and more companies are realizing, like, and someone told me this very early on, and it's always stuck with me. She said, if you're the blank, if you're the sustainable blank, you still have to be really good at the blank, you know? And so for us, like, oh, we're the Amazon for social good, you know, like Forbes called us. Well, then we still have to be a really good Amazon. We have to be a really good shopping site. It has to be very user-friendly. Like, the basics are still there. And I think more and more of us are realizing that. And maybe it seems obvious when you say it, but like, I think a lot of us go into it, well, we'll just make a sustainable version of that. And people will like it because it's sustainable. They're used to a certain level of convenience when they're shopping, you know? Or so if you're going to be, you know, sustainable H&M, or, you know, you're going to make hoodies and stuff, like, people still want a cool looking hoodie. They want a comfortable hoodie. All those things, you know, you still have to be a good, if you're the sustainable blank, you got to be a good blank, you know, and that has to be core of what you do. You got to be high quality and a good company all around. And so I think just the sophistication of companies, the number of companies, the breadth of companies, but also just like how good avocado mattress, #1 rated mattress by Consumer Reports of all the mattresses, not among the sustainably made mattresses. They're just the best. They're just the best. And so, like, for me, that's exciting when it's like, see, now, like, social enterprise kicking ass in the world. You know what I mean? Like, now winning at what they do, at being the best mattress. Like that, you know, it's not we're just is kind of sustainable, but you have to sacrifice. No, you can get the best thing and be sustainable. Like, that's what we need to do more of as a movement. And I see it more and more all the time.
Well, I think that's great. And I'm sure, you know, as I engage with a lot of smaller companies that are, you know, putting their toe into the purpose-driven business, impact business kind of territory, you know, I'm sure everybody wants to be one of your partners.
Hope
Because
so. Apply.
you, the way I understand it, you've got screens that you, when you're looking at companies, like, just everybody can't say, all right, we're doing good, we want to be.
Sure.
So tell us how you pick
Yeah.
and what do you look for? Because
Yeah.
listening, you know, if they're not already affiliated with you, they're like, well, how do we make that happen? So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and this is something that this was a big learning curve for us too, because that's, how do you define good, and what's the sort of cutoff? What's the threshold going to be? And when we started, we said, we're not going to make any subjective choices. We don't want to be in that end of things. We're going to look to third-party certifications, and so there's a lot of those these days. Certified B Corps and Rainforest Alliance, Forest Stewardship Council. Leaping Bunny certifies whether your products are made cruelty-free and not tested on animals and things. So there's all these different labels. We say, well, we're just going to look to those. We're going to roll everything up, and you know what? And then we're even going to make like an equation with a point score, or give an overall good score to rank businesses how good they are. And like a lot of people try that sort of thing, and it's really hard, especially with small like non-public companies, and and a lot of these businesses, because they're smaller or medium sized, like they're not certified. They haven't taken the time. A lot of times these certifications cost money. Yeah. And so we would find these amazing companies that were just crushing it. That in some cases, I'm sure in many ways were, better than some certified B Corps, but they haven't got certified. So that was a challenge. Plus we also realized just that, like, how do you put a point score on these things? One company is creating really cutting edge, their production facility is run on clean energy and recycling water, and they figured out how to make it zero waste. I mean, amazing. And then over here, you got 3 people in a pole barn or whatever, where their only electricity is a light bulb, and they're making handmade stuff out of upcycled materials, actually taking waste out of the waste stream. Who's more sustainable? Who gets a higher point score? Who's a 6.2 and who's a 6.6? And does it matter? And so we really had to adjust our approach. And so instead, now we do very much make subjective judgments. And we realize all these point scores, they're subjective judgments. Who decided how many points each thing is? You can't escape the fact that defining good is an inherently subjective endeavor. You know what I mean? It's going to be subjective. So we said, all right, look, we're going to have to make some subjective choices. And so we've set up a rubric, but it's less stringent and not relying on point scores and equations. So we're looking for companies that are doing good for people and doing good for the planet. And doing good for people, you can use, there's some objective things like wages. We can look in the US at the MIT county by county calculator to determine what's a living wage in that county. For other regions around the world, there are other organizations that we look to, to determine what's a living wage. What would someone have to be paid to afford basic necessities? And so then you could say, okay, well, we can find out if folks are paying a living wage. But a lot of it is, safety standards, how do you put a point score on that? You can put a number on child and trafficked labor. We want that to be 0, of course. But right, so then it's, how do you demonstrate that? Well, so we ask, we ask companies a number of questions in that category, people and the planet, and other categories as well. But those are the main ones, people and planet. And so, when it's like, how do you guarantee that your production facilities are free of child and trafficked labor? And they say yes. And then we say, how can you guarantee that? And with a bigger company we've worked with, like Patagonia, they can say, well, we pay an independent organization like Verite, and blah blah blah, and they can tell us the process and all that. And we say, okay, it's good enough for us. We'll accept that. Others will say, we have one production facility, there's 14 people working there, I know all their names, I know how we all came to know them, I know they're not children, and I know they're not trafficked. And we say, okay. Now at some point, we'd like to also get to the point where we have the resources to then, sure, fly across the world and spot check even like 10% of these factories, but we don't. But we feel like with the questions, the follow-up questions, and then we ask, for documentation and other ways that companies can demonstrate that they're doing what they say they're doing, but it's still going to be inherently subjective. Like I said, so it's good for people, good for the planet. On the planet, we ask open-ended questions a lot about, asking companies to tell us how you are substantially more sustainable than the big name counterpart in your industry. Because like I said, it'll be such a wide variety between all these really cool, innovative, clean energy, water recycling, et cetera, versus, I don't know, we're just, we have 0 carbon footprint and we're taking waste out of the waste stream to make our things. Like, okay, yeah, we both consider you both to be substantially. Now, what's the point score? I don't know, we don't have that anymore. So you got to be good for people, good for the planet. That gets you on DoneGood. Then we'll ask about whether your products are organic or made in the USA, or is your company women owned or person of color owned, so that users on our site can filter by those things if they want to find those things. But we're not going to list a company just because they're women owned or just because they're made in the USA, because that doesn't speak to us good for people, good for the planet, socially responsible, environmentally responsible. Those are the things to get you on DoneGood. And then we'll note the other things that you're doing. And then at the end of the day, what we're going to do is we're going to take that information, we'll make a decision that, like, yes, you're going to be a part of this set of companies. You know, we say our main, overarching goal is if everyone shopped at the set of businesses that are on DoneGood, instead of the big name counterparts in the industry, the world would be a substantially better place. We feel like we can very confidently answer, yes, that's the case. But more importantly, our users, we put the question to our users, and we're always asking users to suggest businesses or users to flag if they have any concerns about any of our businesses. And we rarely get it, because we feel like there's no close calls. And if there's a close call, we don't put folks on. The ones that are on are just like so ridiculously amazing that, like, it's an easy answer. And so, it's inherently subjective. And then at the end, we're not in the business of point scores and numbers, because one, what does it mean? It's totally subjective. Two, we found that's not what consumers want anyway. This is a 6.4 overall, but they're a 5.8 on environment and a 6.2 on social and a this and a that. I'm like, what does that mean? So instead, we tell the story. We tell our users, here's what they're doing. They're in a small facility, handmade out of upcycled materials. This one is using clean energy and the water recycling, all these innovative. And then our users know what it is they're doing, and they can make a decision, right? Ultimately it's about the user, the shopper, the consumer having the information and then making that choice. And so, and being able to filter about the things that you care most about. I mean, that's really the business we're in. And so we can get this information from companies, we can present it to our users, and then they can decide who they want to shop with, and they can decide if, these businesses are as amazing as we say they are.
Yeah. So what you were just saying brings up two questions for me. So it sounds like some of your existing partners and consumers make recommendations for.
Definitely. We get a lot of businesses like that.
And then other people, companies must hear about you, and then they
apply. Yep. We have both forums on our site. Suggest a brand that you just happen to know about, and then the other one, do you work here? Then fill out the more detailed application from a company. Yeah.
So I would assume early on you were actually out kind of searching the landscape. Who's out there? Who are the cool companies? What products are they making? Do you see that that's shifting as you get better known?
Definitely. No, that's a thing that is our problem is no longer finding businesses. It's dealing with all the incoming requests as quickly as we can, but then even then that's a good problem to have. But then we both want to be handling those incoming requests, but also still on the lookout for amazing companies at the same time. So now the challenge has been like to our team members who are on that end of things, our partner relations folks who are working with our partner brands, to say like, hey, let's make sure to still carve out some of your time to be on the lookout for really cool companies out there, because a lot of their time is spent with the income. And again, we're grateful. We're grateful that other companies want to be on board and want to be a part of it. That's been one of the most successful things. When you say we made progress, like definitely, I feel like we're known now in the social enterprise community, and of course those businesses are looking for any other sales channel they can, and we're glad to be able to help provide them with another one.
So let's talk about the other side. So, the companies that are conscious companies making products that are good for people or the planet, like you say, they're looking for new sales channels.
Yep.
In addition to like going to whatever especially these days with COVID, they're probably not going to that many maker festivals and some of the ways may have sold in the past.
Yep.
But, what about the other side, consumers? How do they find you? Granted, you pop up in some really key places.
Well, we don't pop up until you come to our site and get our extension in the first place, right? So we still people have to do that before we'll start popping up on Amazon and Google and the other big name retailer sites. Yeah.
So because you've been at this a while, and there's kind of this groundswell of companies that are really want to build good into the core of what they're doing. So how do you see are consumers changing at the same rate, or are the so tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what you're seeing there in terms of trends.
Yeah, same rate. I don't know. That's I think there is, maybe we're a little further ahead in people wanting to start social enterprises, or certainly working at social enterprises. I mean, that's a huge, that I think is really driving the change at the corporate level, is attracting talent, because millennials especially, or Gen Z now coming up behind them, I'm right on the bubble between Gen X and millennial, so I can claim either. We really want purpose-driven work, even more, more so than future generation. There's a lot of research on this. And so, was it 2011, 15% of Fortune 500 companies were doing a corporate social responsibility report every year. Now it's upwards of like 90%, right? And so whether it's whatever it says in that report, whether it's lip service, whether it's real, whether it's greenwashing, but like the fact that 90% now feel obligated to do so, to do one, whereas a decade ago, hardly any were, that tells you something. That's progress. Even greenwashing, the fact that greenwashing exists and now is a term and now is something people are aware about, that's so much progress. The fact that corporations would lie to try to sound more sustainable, that shows that they think consumers are paying attention to this, And certainly, I was saying, I think the attracting talent drives a lot of that too, because they know that people want to work at a company that has some kind of purpose. And that's why then, like even a company that isn't particularly, like a social enterprise, they're trying to articulate some greater purpose in the world. Uber is like transporting people to their dreams or some shit, but they're trying to capture some kind of, but look, no, we're helping people have better lives, yeah, I think at the business level, at the choosing where to want to work and attracting talent, but certainly at the consumer level too. I mean, there has been an explosion in the past, if you look at 20 years, but even the last 10, even the last 5, consumer demand for ethical and sustainably made products has exploded. Now, it's both, and in fact, I mean, to the point where like Nielsen has issued a couple of successive reports that continue to show, consumer care about the impact of their purchases, and their desire for sustainable products continues to rise. Nielsen had a quote in one of those reports that said, the consumer landscape is changing forever. People now are starting to weigh, impact on the world and impact on their health and their family, as much as traditional factors like price and convenience and basic product quality. Like those things are now starting to rival in the consumers, more and more consumers' mind. And this is Nielsen. This isn't some, out there group or someone who's in the tank for social enterprise. It's just business research.
Yeah.
And they said brands who fail to take this into account in the coming years will be left behind. Again, all brands, every coverage. So it is happening at the consumer level. Now, it's one of those things. There's been a ton of progress, and like the mountains we were talking about. So there's been a ton of progress, an explosion of consumer demand, an explosion in consumer consciousness, just the idea to be thinking and asking about the impact of your purchases, like how did this get made? What kind of supply chain? That 20 years ago, that was like the first wave of the idea of like sweatshop activism and stuff when I was in school. It's like 20 years to turn of the century, and since then it's even just grown more. I mean, you can see it in the fair trade offerings, organic offerings, non-toxic offerings, things like this, eco-friendly tags. And also though, when you think about like all consumers, American consumers generally, like, is it mainstream? Have we hit that tipping point yet? No, I don't think so. So it's, where are we in that exponential curve? I mean, if you look at that small piece of the graph, I feel like conscious consumerism has gone way up. But are we still at this point in the exponential curve and the hockey stick's down here? Or are we at this point and the hockey stick right around the corner? I don't know. That's tough to say. I think it's exciting what an explosion there has been, and how much more conscious consumers. The fact that stuff like this exists, these purpose-driven business summits and things, like they didn't have stuff like this not that long ago, and now it's all growing and it's all moving in the right direction. We need to all go faster, But man, is it but it's exciting.
Well, and I think part of what's amazing is with social media in general, and with platforms like yours with DoneGood, consumers have a way to find out more
More information.
the companies that they're
Yeah.
buying from, the products that they're interested in. And, you know, I think as that information is more readily available, then people like, I think intrinsically, especially if money is a little tight and they can do double duty with a consumer purchase, like get a great product and know that they're doing
Yeah.
at the same time.
It's something you were going to buy anyway, something you needed to get anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's the key with everything. Somebody asked me, I forget what the question, something like this. And we were talking about, you know, the future of sort of just doing good generally. And I said, it's getting people into people's existing streams of behavior. Like when the things that we do anyway, you know, like, I don't know, you know, this is probably a bad example, but like if we're all going to, well, I'm back in pre-COVID times, but if we were all going to pack in a stadium at a concert and release all that heat and energy, how can we turn that to good? And then, you know, you're contributing something by going to a concert. You don't, it's less of asking people to make trade-offs and sacrifices. I mean, look, it's good to make trade-offs and sacrifices, and it's good to sacrifice. And also, though, what happens when we can have fun and do good at the same time? Well, you're going to get more buy-in. You know what I mean? And like, and all of us want to. I mean, what's the point of all this? It's to have the world be a place where people can be happy. You know, and so how can you do happy, fun things and be good at and do good at the same time? Yeah, if you're going to buy stuff anyway and do good at the same time. But, you know, whatever it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, whatever other things that we are going to do anyway. Yeah, I'm at my job. I'm going to go to a job, but I'm doing good while I'm at work. And I'm doing good when I'm at home buying stuff. And I'm doing good when I cook. But I'm also doing good in my other recreational activities. You know, the more that you get anything into people's existing streams of behavior, the more successful it's going to be. I mean, that was a big part of why we developed the Chrome extension. We said, well, where's everyone going to shop? Amazon. So you can, you know, kind of compete with Amazon. But how can we sort of get into people's existing stream of behavior so people can still go to Amazon like they're used to, but then, oh, there are these alternatives, and all I have to do differently, the only effort I'm asking is for someone to move their mouse 4 inches to the right, right? Like you have to reduce the friction. You have to, the more that you reduce the sacrifice, you reduce the effort required to do good, the more good you're going to get. People are, I feel like sometimes people are lamenting, you know, like, oh, I wish people cared more. I think it's incumbent on all of us to make it easier for people to turn the care they do have. People care, but people are also busy and on budgets, and we all are. Give me a break, me, you, all of us. Like, there's a million things that we could be doing to make the world better, you know, in every way at any time, and we can't do all of it. We have things to do. We have kids, and plus, you know, we want to get this cell phone. Man, these cell phones are not made in good conditions. But how are we supposed to live in modern society without that? So, you know, we're all making choices, and we can only ever do so much. So we all, you know, people care. But how do you take, you know, you're going to get action when you take the amount of care and the effort required and you align them. That's when action occurs. And so we have to continue to make it easier and easier and easier for people to do good in the world. We're trying to do that through consumer spending. Great. Put all the companies here in one spot so you can discover them all. You know that there's one spot to come wherever you need to shop. You're going to be able to easily find it from a social enterprise or a Chrome extension. You're going to be out on the internet anyway, and we're going to show you those alternatives, making it easier and easier. But we need to do that sort of, you know, in every part of this movement, in all facets of society. How do we make it just easier and easier and easier for people to do the right thing, to do good for others? The easier we make it, the more we're going to get it.
I completely agree with you on that. You know, I've been saying for years, there needs to be a site like DoneGood where people can go and say, you know, I need socks. Like, who are the cool sock companies?
Totally.
And not have to work hard at it, because like you say, people are busy, they're on budgets, and that the company needs to be able to tell a good story about what they're doing and be, you know, transparent about that.
Totally.
You see a ton of different companies and how they talk about themselves. So based on kind of where things are going, for the folks that are listening, what are some of your tips about how they need to be presenting themselves so that consumers resonate with what they're talking about?
Yep. No, I think that's right. Well, I think first step, if you haven't decided what you're making yet, is making something people need, making something that's not already saturated. Like, how are you actually going to contribute to the movement? I mean, there's a ton of women's ethical fashion. Now, if you're a good designer and you say, no, but there's a niche here, there's some need that's not being met, I'm sure there is, do that. But if you're like, yeah, I'm gonna make t-shirts. Guess what? There's a ton of, man, like ethical t-shirts, ethically sustainably made t-shirts out there. Like, unless that t-shirt like needs to exist or people need it or it's really different and unique somehow, don't do another t-shirt, you know. Like, we got a lot of t-shirts, so what else, you know, that, and that's what I was saying was exciting, is that now, because now it is bed sheets and mattresses and, you know, like all manner of household good, toothbrushes, razors, you know, like all things, and then and those are things that people do need, you know. And so I'd say it's first, before you, you know, if you haven't got to the part where you're talking about yourself and you're trying to decide, you're looking to make that leap, maybe find something, and the more that it is a need as opposed to like a nice to have, the more successful you'll be. And are you doing something innovative? Again, are you being good at the blank? If you're the sustainable blank, are you being good at the blank? Like, first of all, what's the blank that people need that really solves a problem for people? Can you do it in a way that is more convenient or cheaper or like healthier, that is speaking to someone's self-interest? Because it turns out, you know, like if you can speak to their self-interest, that's helpful. So it just is, you know. So that's the first thing. It's something that people need that really solves a problem. But then, you know, I talked about like talking about your product and talking about why it's a good quality, cool product that someone should want to get anyway. Because here's another thing about conscious consumers. Like, they're asked, the first question is, do I need to buy this? Because they recognize that as sustainable as it is, if you're buying something new, there's some carbon emissions in creating that thing. Now, I will also say that, like, I think it's important for us all to realize that, because some people will say, well, the most sustainable thing you can buy is nothing at all. And I say, well, in terms of just straight total carbon emissions, that's true. But, you know, then you're also, if you're not buying something from these companies, you're not supporting these companies, you're not supporting the broader paradigm shift we need for business, for industry to have in the first place. Or, you know, Starfish Project, they're everything they do is helping women escape sex trafficking, get jobs, making jewelry, and then getting skills training, career training, so they can graduate out of that and have professional careers. If we never buy the jewelry, they can't help any women, you know. But anyway, that aside, like, it's talking about the, you know, the quality of your product and why that product, why that product is needed, why it is something that people ought to buy in the first place, instead of, because that is the first question a conscious consumer will ask is, do I really need this? They're trying to cut down on their consumerism and their purchasing, which is interesting for us being a shopping site and promoting conscious consumerism to consumers who are trying not to be consumers. You know, that's a headwind. And we appreciate that. Look, we don't want people to buy a bunch of stuff they don't need or that they're not going to use or they're going to throw it in the landfill. But we do want these companies to be successful and prove that businesses who act like this can succeed, and the world needs it. So, you know, when people do, you know, need to buy something, they should buy it from these companies. They should come through DoneGood. But so talking about why your product is quality, why it's good, and if it's high quality, it'll last longer. That means less waste. That means less consumerism in the long run, right? And so it is more sustainable to get that product that's high quality. So I'd say, you know, you got to talk about that. Why you're the good, sustainable blank. And then I think it's recognizing the psychology of a conscious consumer. And first of all, now let's recognize there is no conscious consumer. There's a bunch of people who are making a bunch of choices in a bunch of different circumstances. So one, there's sort of a spectrum, and everyone exists on, you know, the more or less conscious end of that spectrum. But even then, it's not that you're always at this point in the spectrum. It depends what you're buying and how much time you have that day and how quickly you can find something, and what your budget is like at the time and how specific your need is, you know, like, and people will move on that spectrum. And conscious consumers, the DoneGood users that we interview, that we talk to, such like good people, super thoughtful people. That's what makes them conscious consumers. You know, they're thinking really hard about all of their choices, about what to buy in particular. And they're thinking about, what do I need to buy this? And then they're thinking about all the things, though, right, that all consumers think about. They're not aliens. Conscious consumers are still consumers. And so they're thoughtful people that also, we find a lot of them work in healthcare, education, for a nonprofit, for a social enterprise. What's that mean? They're on a budget. So like all consumers, they're thinking budget. Like all consumers, when they're buying clothes, they're thinking style. You know, like, sorry, everybody wants to look good. And even if your style is, I want to look like I don't care, well, then you're still shopping by style. You're still not going to buy certain things based on how it looks. And so, you know, it's got to look cool. It's got to fit right. It's got to be comfortable. It has to meet that need. And so, every consumer is checking boxes. They're finding the middle of the Venn diagram. Is it my budget, my need, my style, my whatever else? And now with conscious consumers, they don't lose all those. They just tack a couple more on, and I want to know about sustainability and the mission of the company, but they will sacrifice. One thing we hear from folks we talk to all the time is you hear these little tidbits like, I try really hard and I want to do this and that. But, sometimes you can't win them all. You can't do everything. Like people will cut themselves. That's like, hey, look, and it's true. And rightfully so. I mean, look, sometimes we cut ourselves slack, maybe too often. We justify our choices. Maybe we could be better. But, you can't do everything. You can't be perfect. And so that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with that kind of thought process. And you're dealing with a consumer who thinks so hard about it and feels so guilty about it and wants to make the right choice that they're stressed out. And so when they come to you, I mean, you want to know, like, this is who's coming to you. A very thoughtful person who is very stressed out and who is trying to check a million boxes. And it's your job to make it as easy as possible to check all those boxes very quickly, very easily. We got a great quality product. We're awesome. Here's our mission. This is why we're awesome. And here's why I can help check all your boxes. Now, that too then said, recognizing one of those boxes is budget. And because of that, conscious consumers still respond to sales and they still respond to discounts. And so, we talk with some companies who are kind of philosophically opposed to that, either because they think they don't want to sound like a, used car lot, which I understand. We very much don't want to sound like that either. We think there's something thoughtful and meaningful behind what we're doing. We're not just trying to hawk shit and scream sale, sale, sale. And at the same time, these thoughtful conscious consumers will sometimes take weeks to make a purchase, and they're not sure if it's in their budget or they should buy it. And then when it's 25% off, that's the thing that'll get them to pull the trigger and make that purchase. And so, discounts work on people. That's why all these other companies are doing it. And so it's, I think you can still be thoughtful about it. I think you can still be authentic when how you talk about it. You don't have to sound like a used car lot, but I'm just telling you, these folks are on a budget and sales and discounts work. And so I think it's just recognizing the humanity and the normalcy of a conscious consumer. We're all busy, we all have budgets, and we're not all that different from, regular people. There's regular people who care about these other issues. So I think, those are some specific tips, but the bigger thing is just recognizing who you're talking to. A really good person who's probably not rich and probably is really busy and wants to check all these boxes, but will give up if you don't make it easy and nice for them super quick.
So I'm curious, when you look at who your partners are, you've got some companies that would be in the bucket of the way they're producing their product is either has some social or environmental good kind of built in. Maybe it's the products they're using, who they're using as labor, the materials, who the labor is. How many of the companies are doing a redistributive sort of model where they're actually giving back? It's more about that. That's built into their mission, is that they're giving back profits? Or do you find you've got folks that you promote on DoneGood, that it's more woven in?
It's all woven in. That's part of, I didn't get to this when you were asking about our criteria, but another key part of our criteria is we're looking for the businesses where doing good for people on the planet is in the fabric of what they do. You know what I mean? It's not just a company just giving to charity or just having a 1-for-1 program. Buy a pair of shoes, give away a pair of shoes. That's not good enough for us. It's for us. So a lot of our companies do give back and do have community investments, do have these great give back programs where they're investing in people who don't necessarily aren't their workers. That's great. We love that as an extra. But if it's you're giving away a pair of shoes, are your workers earning a living wage so they can afford to buy a pair of damn shoes? That should be first thing, right? Before we're giving money away. Are our own people, can our own people afford shoes? Are they all earning a living wage? Do they all have a good life? Are they all economically empowered? And when you're giving away those shoes, where are you giving them away? And are you putting local shoemakers out of business? Right? And so, some of this stuff can get gimmicky, and it's not truly doing good for people on the planet. And so we're looking for the businesses where everything they do, right, is their products are made in an environmentally sustainable way. They're not just giving to a nonprofit. We're members of 1% for the planet. That means 1% of our revenue goes to environmental nonprofits. That's good. We're glad. We love other 1% for the planet members. We think every business should be one. That's not good enough. If you're giving that 1% for the planet, but then you're dumping all your, waste in the river, and you're a huge carbon emitter, and you're not thinking about how to make your own company more environmentally sustainable, what's the point? I mean, every big company gives a percent to charity. They get a tax write-off. They get to talk about it during the holidays or whatever. But what is that? No, we want brands that's their whole thing. It's their whole mission. Everything they do is about making the world better, and that's baked in through and through, throughout all their operations. Then if you also give money away, great. That's a wonderful thing, and we're glad for it. Some of our companies have amazing give back programs where they're truly, and the best ones are making investments in the communities that really help empower people and help leave long lessons. You know what I mean? It's like it's education or financial literacy, or it's things that are going to help the people in those communities then become leaders and better their communities and take control of their situations. And it's true empowerment, as opposed to here's a pair of shoes. You know what I mean? Not to talk badly about any company in particular, but a pair of shoes is fine, but how's that empowering people? And again, you're probably putting local shoemakers out of business anyway, and your own people can't afford shoes. I don't care about your shoe giveaway anymore.
Yeah. Well, thanks for making that distinction clear. Because my understanding is the DoneGood really was going for the companies that it's just, you can't tease it apart. It's just
totally
baked in.
Your business is making the world better. If you sell more of your products, the world will be better. Not the selling of your products makes the world worse, but then you give a portion of the proceeds away. Yeah.
Right. So for the folks that are listening in, maybe that already have started some kind of a purpose-driven business, what kind of challenges do you see that your company partners have had to navigate? And do you have any tips for folks that are looking to take what they're doing more to scale based on some of the things that you see going on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that really depends on what kind of company you are and where you are at your development. I mean, and if you're consumer facing or not, or what. I mean, I guess one thing I can talk about is, when people think of scaling, they talk about whether to take outside investment, which we did. Although I will say, we were in a startup environment, right? I said we were at the Harvard iLab, and so you're around these other startups, and so everyone's talking about kind of the well-worn path of you raise your friends and family round, then your angel round, then your Series A and B and C, and that makes sense for some companies, but it makes sense for companies that truly are really solving a core problem, and often that means you're making things that have mass appeal, I think, too, right? So it's things that are making things cheaper or more convenient for people, really solving a true pain point where you really can, and really being honest with yourself, and you have to kind of really find ways to test whether this is true, whether it really is that kind of hockey stick kind of company. And depending who you're investing from, there's more and more impact investors out there, but impact investors exist on a spectrum too. Some are they don't care about earning as much of a return. They want to invest in impact. There's a lot of impact investors who are trying to earn a 10x return just like every other VC. And in fact, they're doing so because they want to prove that impact investment can get the same returns, which I think is actually also helpful to the movement. But there has to be that spectrum then. Fine, these ones can invest in the 10x return. Some will invest in the things that get a lower return, but they still generally want a return, and they want you to be on a growth trajectory, a growth path. And so I think it's really trying to learn as much as you can about what kind of businesses are VC fundable and what kind of businesses, may find that hockey stick growth. Any kind of business kind of can in theory, but is it likely that you'll hit that hockey stick growth? And, and then what kind of business should you be? And are you the kind who should take on a bunch of outside money? Or, there are still businesses in the world who, what they do? They make some products, and then they make some profit on those products, and they reinvest it, and they bootstrap the whole way. They're just a company that makes profit, and then they grow, linearly and, you know, just like that. And it's a great, I mean, they call it a lifestyle business. I mean, a lifestyle business can still make millions of dollars. It just means you're not going to get a 10x return for VCs, you know? And so, you know, I mean, even if you raise, right, like $5 million from VCs, are you going to, you know, what are you going to end up selling for? You're going to end up selling for 50 million? Like not many companies do that, you know? And so, that's a small percentage. So I think that's the thing, is like deciding, it's sort of just at least, you know, thinking critically about the path. Like if you're in a startup incubator, startup accelerator, then everyone's talking about, you know, their angel round, their Series A and this and that. Again, there's some business where that makes a ton of sense for, and then there's some business that doesn't, and there's in-betweens, you know what I mean? It's not always like, okay, well, I have to raise my $1 million seed and my, you know, 5 million Series A, and then, you know, whatever. Like you can raise smaller amounts, you can raise it in different ways with different formats. It doesn't have to be, you know, traditional equity investment. There's lots of stuff, and that space is innovating too. I mean, I have companies talking about, you know, we can, you know, take a proportion of your revenue or a portion, you know, of your inventory as collateral. I mean, they're starting to get more creative about ways. Oh, crowdfunding. We did an equity crowdfunding round, which was really interesting, and we did well with that. We raised, you know, $300 and some thousand with that, and now we have people who have invested, you know, $500, $1,000. It's more democratized, and then those people are, you know, power users and ambassadors for DoneGood. So I think, you know, that's something to look at that we did do in conjunction with, you know, we raised about 1.75 million in outside investment. Should we raise all of it or in that way? You know, I don't know. Like, I mean, if you go back and we talk about it, but I guess I think it's just, that's the thing, like knowing that there just is such a wide range of ways you can fund your business, and a big question about whether or not you should take outside funding at all. And just really learning as much about that as you can and thinking critically about it, and talking with various kinds of investors genuinely before you need the money, and building relationships. And then, you know, they say, the old saying is, ask for money and you'll get advice, ask for advice and you'll get money, you know, like really building a relationship, but genuinely having that conversation if you're not sure at first about, like, here's what I'm thinking, you know, what kind of funding, you know, fundraising ought I be thinking about in your opinion? And, you know, is this a VC fundable type of thing? And, having those conversations and having them in a genuine way where you really are trying to learn the answer. And then should you find that you're in a position where you want to raise money, now you have genuine input from investors. Or look, they might have answers. They might have ways that, like, well, no, in your current format, I don't think so, but have you thought about doing this? And that, you know, having as many of those conversations generally, and having people say, have you thought about this? And 9 times out of 10, they don't know your company. That's a crazy idea. Or you've thought about it and you've vetted it and there's a lot of pros and cons, but you've already decided against it. And one time you'll hear something that sounds crazy, but then once in a while you'll hear the same thing from 5 people. And if you ain't listening by then you're not doing, you know, you're not doing something right. You still have to make your own choice. Those 5 people still could all be wrong for your company according to your judgment at the time, and that's all you've ever got is your own judgment at the time. You know your company best. You're living and breathing it. But man, when 5 people tell you something, or when 5 customers tell you something, you know, shit, like you better keep an open mind and keep adjusting your business. And when we started, we were a Yelp style app for local brick and mortar in Greater Boston. I mean, I could go through, I think we're probably getting close on time, so I won't go through all the pros and cons and all the reasons why we pivoted away from that. But like, it's just to say, like, you got to keep changing and evolving your business too, based on these conversations. Talk with experts in the field, talk with investors, always be talking to your customers, always be getting user feedback all the time, because that's been incredibly illuminating for us, and we still don't do it enough. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we're busy, we're doing other stuff. Like, we should be doing more of it. We should be talking to people all the time. But all this stuff that I'm telling you about, like conscious consumers, this is all based on what I think, based on some outside research, you know, also as well, you know, but it's also, a lot of it is derived from talking to our users. And I guess I would caveat with that, anyone who's up here, well, I'm not up here in front of a room, anyone who's on a screen these days, like, yeah, take it all with a grain of salt. I mean, like I said, this is because I've talked to my customers and my users, and I think I know conscious consumers pretty well, because we have a wide array of them shopping on our site. But man, you're going to have, if you're making, you know, like high-end outdoor gear, your people are going to be different than mine. In some ways, they'll probably be the same in their conscious consumerism. But in some ways, they're going to be different attitudes, different demographics, different types of people. And so, like, what does your data on your site usage show you about your users? What is the, you know, when you're having interviews and conversations, what they tell you, and they're gonna, you'll think back and you'll say, oh, in some ways this is just what that guy Cullen on that one video conference was saying, and in some ways he's way off, you know, and that, well, that's perfect. Then you know, so I guess, you know, that's talking to other people and being open-minded, especially your customers. Yeah, I think that's key.
Well, one of the things that I heard kind of woven in, and tell me if I got this right, in what you were just sharing is, you know, there's like, yes, you need to listen and have all those conversations, but you do know your own business the best compared to, you know, a bunch of people outside. And, you know, I think there's this, if you do some traditional business development stuff, sometimes they don't get the social or environmental good piece and what that means in a business. You know, I know I've done a lot of business development things where they're like, what do you mean you want to weave it in? No, you should just make money and then give some back. So, you know, making sure you find the networks of people that are involved and kind of have the same worldview about how to change the world through the power of business and consumer dollars. Like, hang out with those people.
Well, so that, yeah, that's key. I mean, and then there's that world, and then there might be a subset who are your, you know, they call it the MVS, the minimum viable segment, right? I think a lot of people in the startup world talk about the minimum viable product, right? Like, what's the, don't wait till it's perfect. What's the minimum viable? Keyword still viable. Sometimes people put out junk that's below viable, I think, because we're too enamored with that term and the idea of just getting something out quick. So you gotta get out quick, but you gotta still be viable. But it should be your minimum viable product. But then you have to match that to your minimum viable segment, consumer segment. And so who are those people? Certainly, it's probably people who are into the, you know, business as a force for good movement. But then beyond that, like, we found ours tends to be women aged between 26 and 40 who live in cities, who I was saying work in good, you know, health, education, nonprofit, social enterprise, politically progressive, and like it when companies take a political stand. We bash Trump all the time now. You know what I mean? One, because I feel like it, you know, but also it's not because I feel like it. One, yeah, sure. One, it's because I feel like it. I'm CEO. But it's more than that. I never try to make, you know, I don't want it to be about me, but it's, what does the company stand for? Well, look, the company stands for the fight against climate change. So when Trump pulls us out of the Paris Accord, the company doesn't like it. It's not that I don't like it or any of the team members. Like, the company has beliefs and a personality. And we know now some stuff, maybe it's like, you know, I don't know. What's a political issue that the company doesn't care so much about? Anyway, there would be some. Like, we don't want to, you know, weigh in on the Democratic primary just because I'm voting for some. DoneGood doesn't have a horse in the Democratic primary. You know what I mean? Yeah. DoneGood has a position on the climate accord, and DoneGood has a position on $15 an hour campaigns in various cities. The company is for it, right? And so, one, we speak out on those things because it's in line with the company's values, but two, we've also found our customers like it. Our customers, I think Republicans should love what we're doing because it's all market-based, you know? But we just have found not many shop with us, you know, like, it's like 90-some% self-identify as politically progressive and want and love it and respond well to us when we take a stand. So we do, both because it's what we believe, it's what the company believes, but also because it seems to be good for business. So why the hell not? Yeah, we don't Trump. Yeah, we bash him all the time. You know, we take a stand on Black Lives Matter, you know? And so, so it's, you know, I guess that MVS for us, we've gotten to know Lila, we call her, you know, this 26 to 40-year-old woman who lives in a city, lives in urban settings, is politically progressive, is very in tune to diversity and authenticity, wants to see models, you know, size inclusive models, people that look like real people, people who talk like real people. And that's kind of everybody generally these days, is people's bullshit meter. We get bombarded with so many ad messages that even like the mainstream companies recognize authenticity is key and are trying to put their celebrity endorser at their house with no makeup on, you know, because it's just more, people do respond more to authenticity, but even more so for conscious consumers and for, you know, for DoneGood users. So it's about finding, yes, I think like what you're saying, that affinity with people who are in this movement generally. And then even if your minimum viable segment is more fine-tuned, it can't be too specific or there's only 4 people in the world. That's too small. It's minimum viable, again, minimum viable segment, but as small as you can to get to that real core. And then where are they hanging out and what are they reading and what, and what social media are they using and, how are they finding companies and getting to them through those channels, connecting with the people who are your people, who are in your tribe or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Well, we are running down on time here. But before we sign off, any last thoughts about what you see as business for good, kind of the movement and how that's going to change things moving forward?
Well, it's going to be the biggest movement of our time. I mean, that's why I quit my career to do this. I feel like it's, we think we're working on the most important thing in the world. We do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. I mean, it's not for the money. We all used to make more money doing other stuff. We all had, kind of good careers going before. One day, hopefully we'll make some money at this as well, but like, and that's why we do it. I mean, I do think, these things like that we've said that, this business for good movement will be the most important movement of our time. I worked in DC for 10 years and unfortunately, I don't think that's where our salvation lies, like big, bold change to take on a problem as huge as climate change or global poverty. I don't think so, but you could see it already at work and already happening, in the business for good movement, the rapid growth, business for good, social enterprise, conscious consumerism over the past decade has just been incredible. It's been ridiculous. So it's working and it will continue to. And I think we are approaching that tipping point where, within our lifetimes, this will become mainstream. It will become the norm for us to expect. So now it's not just something like, oh, wow, it's incredible. This company's doing good. Now it's like, if it comes out that they're not, nobody shops there anymore. This becomes the expected rule. And when we make that paradigm shift from business should exist to maximize profit, and instead business should exist to do a damn thing in the world and help humanity, and help us continue to keep the earth a habitable planet, and not exploit people and not have, garment factories in Bangladesh collapsing and killing 1,100 women. Like that will be that'll make you such a pariah, you'll drop out of business, right? Like we say, when every business in the world is like the companies that we work with, who themselves are not perfect. We're not perfect. I mean, there is no perfect because there's always trade-offs, but are so good, are so much better, right? When every business in the world is doing what the companies we work with, that we support, are doing. It doesn't matter if the president pulls out of the Paris Accord, because we're going to hit those emissions goals anyway. We're not going to need these fights over minimum wage laws, because every business will be paying a living wage. Now, how long is it going to take before we get to where every business is there? I don't know if that's our lifetimes. I don't know if that's a couple century proposition, but we are moving in that direction. And every time we choose to support a company like this, we help push the world in that direction. We help get closer to that world. And so I think it's really exciting. And I do think it's the hope, because it ain't going to be DC. It's still really important. Everybody vote, because you see there are consequences. But in terms of, solving climate change, solving global poverty, I don't see anything else that's going to do it. It's that $130 trillion that we all spend every year, right? Which is more than the whole U.S. budget by a long shot, right? So like, it's that is the key, and it is the world's most powerful force for change. The choices we make with our money, who we give our money to, is the number one way of all things that we do, probably, that maybe where we choose to work and spend, that amount of time in our lives, things like that. But like, there's not a lot that a person can do to impact the world more than who we all choose to give our money to every day. And every day we're doing it. Every day we're voting for president once every 4 years, voting with our wallets every day. So, but it's all happening. It's all working. You see it in the explosion of the kinds of products. You see it in the way that big companies, Fortune 500 companies, are changing their practices, putting out CSR reports now. Like I said, 15% doing it a decade ago, now over 90. And the way that they are updating their product mix, even with, H&M has like one sustainable pair of jeans or whatever, but they're responding because they see where that this is where things are going. It's happening. And we all have the power to push it forward and to accelerate that pace of change. And within our lifetimes, this will be the most important, most impactful thing that creates the most good for people around the world. I believe that. That's why I quit my job to do this, and I hope more people quit their jobs to do something related to this as well.
Well, thank you. So first step for people, if they don't already have your Chrome,
The plugin or extension, yeah.
Extension, like go get it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, right? So there's our website. We also have a mobile app, but which is also just our mobile website. So, it's the same thing. But you can get our app as well. So the first thing, is just shopping on our site. You can get all the companies, all the products on our site, DoneGood.co, DoneGood.co. Or if you download our app, then our app accesses our mobile site, and you can shop the same way on your phone. Or you can just go to DoneGood.co on your phone, and it's virtually the same experience. So that's, just shopping at DoneGood.co. Then you can find and you can support all these companies that are doing so much good for the world, that have such great stories. People tell us how much they like our emails, our email newsletters. We get responses, which I don't know how many companies get responses to their corporate newsletter, but we do. And people just like hearing the stories, even if they don't need to buy the thing from that company, or, it's like, it's only women's fashion. So like, I'm not buying from it, but they just like the story, the stories of these companies, the people behind these, who they're all people who have quit their jobs, right, to start something that they really believe in and are really passionate about. And they're a self-selecting group of really cool people. I love them all. Yeah. And so, anyway, yeah, come into our site to shop or just check out these companies, sign up for our email. And then the Chrome extension too. Yeah. If you would like to, obviously we prefer people just shop on our site, but you want to get that extension, so when you are on Amazon and you are on Google shopping, and you're searching for things to shop, or going to big name retailer sites, you'll be able to see what's on Amazon, and you can see what DoneGood companies have to offer as well. So you can get that on our website though. You also get that at DoneGood.co. So come to our site, get the extension, and if you do some shopping, we really appreciate it, because it helps fund our work and helps keep us alive and keep doing what we're doing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Cullen. This has been great. Really appreciated you sharing, your vision, where things are going, and all
what it is.
Good is doing. And, I truly appreciate that you've created such a strong platform that helps unite all these companies that are really looking to do business in a different way, and help them get found, because they're out there in the trenches doing the tough work, and can't find them, then, it's just tragic.
They have to succeed. If this whole movement somehow fails, and it just reinforces the idea, you have to be totally profit driven. Oh, that'll set us back. We're in big trouble. But luckily, there are a bunch of companies who are very successful, just becoming increasingly more successful. But yes, we hope that we can help them be all be even more successful, and help in our way to help fuel the growing movement. So we hope we can. We hope we are. And thank you for allowing some more people to know about us and hear from us. And hopefully, like I said, then they'll come, they'll shop, and that helps us, and it helps all our partner companies, and it helps drive the movement forward. So we don't buy stuff you don't need, but when you do need something, we appreciate that people come to us and look to our partner companies.
Yeah. Thank you again. And thank you for everybody that tuned in live or are listening to the recording. Hopefully you've been as inspired as I have been. So thanks for coming to this session of the Purpose Driven Business Summit, powered by Big Purpose, Big Impact. And we look forward to seeing you on the next session. Bye-bye for now.